Hi LazyKH viewers. If you're a programming enthusiast, I've got a super fun, super difficult programming challenge for you that involves deprecated APIs. Anyway, what you're looking at right now is the oldest Wayback Machine snapshot of any of my YouTube channels. This is what jacknjellify looked like on November 21st, 2011, which is 9.5 years ago. And this was before YouTube did the whole redesign that turned every channel page into a white, flat, boring background. So back then, you could choose your web page's background color, the upper banner, and where the widgets were. You just had a lot more freedom. So anyway, what I wanted to point your attention to was not the fact that we only had 1,400 subscribers at the time, but instead to the fact that there's this widget here called channel comments. And what I think is going on here is that people are commenting directly on our channel page to us. They're not commenting on any of the videos, which is something that has existed for all time. You know, you can still comment on videos today. Instead, they're sort of talking directly to us, or they're talking with each other about us, like in a very general channel page. It's like an open forum or an open bulletin board for that type of thing. Now, I think channel comments were sort of slowly phased out by YouTube around 2014, 15, 16. I can't quite remember exactly when. But if you jump forward to YouTube in 2021 and check out our modern YouTube channel page, one, it's white and flat because of the redesign. But two, you don't get any channel comments anymore. You get this community tab. And with the channel's community tab, there are community posts where people can comment on those. So this post has 2,985 comments. But you know, these commenters are replying to the post. They're not in the general open forum kind of thing like this. So what's the most intriguing to me about this whole situation is there's a threshold in YouTube's system, I think 1,000 subscribers, where if you have 1,000 subs, YouTube will give you a community tab. But if you don't have 1,000 subs, like this channel OZGQ, then YouTube thinks like, oh, you don't quite have access to a community yet, so we'll give you a discussion tab. And if you click on the discussion tab of a smaller channel like OZGQ, you get what's essentially the same as the channel comments widget. It's just people talking directly in one place about the channel. And what I think is really interesting is I think the channel comments were deprecated around 2014, 15, 16, but I don't remember this discussion tab appearing until maybe 2018 or 19. So there's this gap of a few years between the two things where like there just weren't any of those at all. So if you look at the comments on this channel in the discussion tab, they're either super recent, like 3 months ago, 5 months ago, 2 months ago, or they're really old, like 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 8 years ago. And I also found this other channel, Tommy D, who I know was subscribed to my channels like way, way long ago in 2010. If you go to discussion, you get comments from like 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And what I think, here's like 10 years ago as well. What I think is interesting is what I had thought happened was when I started noticing that YouTube was phasing out channel comments, I thought they were just planning on deleting this entire database of comments. And if you actually look at Social Blade back in 2013, you can see that like they're already phasing out channel everything, like channel views. Sometimes it's like +0 for like weeks on end. And that's because I remember at the time YouTube was starting to disable the ability to even view your channel viewership at all. Like they only focused on subscriber count and total view count. So I was under the impression that everything here would just get deleted, like the database would become inaccessible. And that made me really sad because there are certain stories that I tell people of old YouTube that are only happened in the channel comments. You know, like conversations or mentions of like old YouTube series that have been erased from the internet. I talked about them in the channel comments. And I had assumed if YouTube just deletes them all, that the evidence for everything would just be gone. But looking on like Tommy D's account, the fact that like these comments are still here, and the fact that these are probably the same as what this would be, makes me think that there must be some way to access this sort of database, even for a channel above 1,000 subs like jacknjellify, through some API call. And that's the whole premise of the programming challenge I'm proposing to you. I want to find a way to have an API call that can access these comments that are, around 10 years old, even though YouTube has no way of showing them on the website itself. And the reason why I think this is possible is because if they show up on this page, like when I refresh it, there must be some API call that's retrieving these. And I've even tried inspecting Element and like looking at the network history to see like what data is being fed through what pipelines to kind of get these out. I've tried. I can't really understand what's going on. And I've done all the sleuthing, but I just can't find any leads, like any actual like methods to do this reliably on other channels. And if you search on Google YouTube channel comments API, so few people want to get that data that there's no information on it. There's no documentation. What you get are pages like this that just talk about how to access comment threads on YouTube videos, which is, what everyone knows about. Like, it's super familiar to know that, like, oh, if you put in a video like this URL here, you'll get back these 35,000 comments. That's like super understandable, super common, and I'm sure lots of people are doing this all at once. So like it's totally reasonable that this page would show up first on the Google search results. But I have not found any documentation on how to get channel comments because they're deprecated. But they're not really deprecated because they still show up on small channels discussion sections. Well, not small. I mean, under 1,000 subs, so that like discussion tab has not been replaced by community tab. Because it's like if I asked 999,000 people to unsubscribe from jacknjellify so that we lost the community tab, it would actually be a valid method to regain the discussion tab and re-find these obscure comments. But I'm not going to do that, of course, because like one, not everyone would comply. Two, it would like backtrack a lot of the progress I've been working towards for years and years. And three, you'd have to scroll through like thousands and thousands of pages, and that's super inefficient. So I just want a way to do one API call and somehow just ask, what are the most recent channel comments that came before, say, December 2010? Because maybe I mentioned some story or some lore back then, and I just don't have any evidence that actually happened. We do get these 10 comments only because they were the 10 most recent when this was snapshotted into Wayback Machine. So like this is in Wayback Machine's database, not YouTube's. So I think it's just a good sampling of like what can exist here. And yeah, okay. I think that's all I wanted to say. If any of you in the comments find anything, like you find any documentation at all, just post a link in the comments of this video, and maybe like a description of how you got to it and like if you've tried to use it. I don't think it's likely that anyone will care as much as I do, so you're probably like I'm doubtful that you guys will find anything that I haven't already found. Considering I've already like looked through this stuff and tried to like actually read the responses to these API calls, and I haven't found anything. But I just think it's funny and interesting, and I'm sure like YouTubers who like to do internet history things might also appreciate this, because I'm sure tons of other YouTube pages from the early 2010s also had crazy internet stories happen in these regions, and that stuff needs to be archived. We don't want to burn history books. We gotta save them. We gotta preserve them. Anyway, my spiel is over. The last thing I want to say is, can you believe that like back then YouTube, like these episodes would only get to like 20,000 views or so, and like these aren't even like these have been out for months and months by this point. Like look at that, 5 months ago 35,000. But BFDI was a much more niche show back then. But anyway, thank you for watching this LazyKH video. Let me know if you find anything, and I will see you all later. Goodbye.